The competitive balance tax. It's the threshold set by the Commissioner's Office of Major League Baseball that limits how much a team can spend on its roster. Teams can go over the threshold, but are required to pay a premium or tax for doing so. The competitive balance tax, or CBT, is in the headlines right now because Mookie Betts may be on the trading block for the Boston Red Sox, and Kris Bryant's name has been bandied about as a potential trade piece for the Chicago Cubs. So why are players in their prime, potential franchise cornerstones, being mentioned as trade pieces? Is the CBT the only reason? Let's delve into what exactly the CBT is. Could it have an impact on the hot stove this winter? How would that work? Last season, the CBT was set at $206 million. Say you're an MLB general manager and your team's salary came in above that threshold. If this was your first year over the number, your tax would be 20% on overages. A second consecutive year sees the penalty rise to 30%. 3 or more years in a row yields a 50% tax. But the total amount above the threshold also carries an additional penalty. If your team is $20 to $40 million above the CBT, that sees an additional 12% tax. $40 million above brings a 42.5% penalty. And the tax can hit 45% for a second consecutive year above $40 million. Take the Boston Red Sox, who ended the 2019 season with a $242.8 million payroll. They surpassed the $206 million threshold, and since it's their second season in a row doing so, they must pay a 30% tax on their overages. Since their overages are higher than $20 million, the tax on overages over $20 million bumps up to 42%. A 30% tax on $20 million is $6 million, and a 42% tax on the remaining $16.8 million is more than $7 million bucks, a sum total of more than $13 million in fines. As if that wasn't enough, teams who exceed the CBT threshold by more than $40 million see their highest Rule 4 draft selection move back 10 spots. If the pick falls within the first 6 picks, the team's second pick moves back 10 places. However, the CBT is not based on year-to-year payroll. It's calculated by each player's average annual value. For example, Nolan Arenado's 8-year, $260 million deal cost the Colorado Rockies an average of $32.5 million a year. So even though Arenado for 2020 is a $35 million investment, the Rockies' CBT threshold is only dinged $32.5 million. So you can see why owners tend to use the tax threshold as a salary cap for their front offices. According to the LA Times, just 3 teams, the Cubs, Red Sox, and New York Yankees, exceeded the competitive balance tax last year and are in line to pay up. Is it any wonder then why Betts and Bryant are rumored to be on the move? Bryant has 1 more year of arbitration left, and Betts is an unrestricted free agent after 2020. If either player resigns, he'll likely put his team over the luxury tax, and for a second or third consecutive year, no less, which increases the tax. Fan bases, of course, want to retain their star players, as do their managers and front offices, but owners may not give their personnel departments a choice. The CBT threshold is set at $208 million for the upcoming 2020 season. According to Spotrac, currently the Red Sox and Houston Astros have luxury tax payrolls above that threshold. The Cubs sit a little more than $200,000 below the tax, and the Yankees are about $1.6 million below the mark, even before either team has thought about signing free agents. Owners have used the CBT as an argument to not invest in a competitive roster, even as 25 teams sit at least $30 million below the tax. Should the CBT be changed in the next collective bargaining agreement? That's up to the league and the union. But the CBT appears to be having a huge impact on roster construction in Major League Baseball, and that's how it would work.